Hey everyone, we'll just give it another minute or two. I think we're missing quite a few people.
Yeah, no, this is Joey from Freedom Flyer. Senny won't be joining, so I'm here in his place.
Great. Great to have you, Joey. All right, there's Hunter. Looks like we have a good number of people, so we can go ahead and get started. We do have pretty big agenda. So first things first, several weeks ago, y'all actually approved a GitHub issue talking about TSC processes. So I went ahead and added these to the wiki page, sent a link in the chat for anyone interested. I know Aswin and some other people are going to work on fleshing this out a bit more on more technical document stuff. So just be on the lookout for now, but this will be where all of that will live. I had a couple people from the, what team was it? The Wave Labs team state that this time is not a very friendly time for them to join. Is there, I wanted to gauge everyone's interest on moving this time to maybe earlier in the day, maybe like 9 a.m. Pacific.
I think that this is a good conversation to have, but might make sense to do at the next TSC sync.
Sure, okay. That works for me. That makes sense since we'll have the new TSC voting contacts set. So Hunter, I don't know if you want to talk through the nominations. Your name is on that, but I'm happy to talk through it as well.
Yeah, give me 30 seconds and I'll be ready.
No worries.
Okay, I'm ready. So, yeah, the norms, I'm not sure, I think it's in the charter, but charter and or norms for the Magma TSC state that TSC membership lasts for 1 year by default. And so it's been a year, give or take, since the TSC was initially formed. So with that in mind, we're moving ahead with the plan to renew and reshuffle the membership for the TSC. So quick primer on what this will look like is we can nominate some people. I have a list that the current TSC has worked on for nomination. And then after that, we'll kick it to Kendall offline to handle collecting and aggregating votes. And then ideally later this week, but worst case before the next TSC sync, the community will know who the next TSC set of TSC members is. The process, the vote process is when the code owners as such vote for the TSC, and the TSC then can elect their chair. So for context, I'm the current chair. So once the new TSC is voted in, they can vote on the new chair. But yeah, there's nothing special about the chair other than just that they are responsible for doing some of the organizational processes. But thankfully, this time, Kendall is helping support a lot of these things as well, which is going to be really nice.
Yeah, Hunter, I just wanted to step in real quick on the process. In all the documents, I don't see the set number of people that you want to have on the TSC. And that's fine. We don't have to do that. In that case, all we need to do is go through the nomination process. And then by the end of that deadline, if you don't get your nomination in, then you will not be considered. So really, we don't even need to move to a voting process. We'll just go through the nominations. And I think, Aswin, correct me if I'm wrong, we decided to do close of business on Wednesday. So let's say 5 p.m. Pacific time. If you don't get that nominations in, then you will not be considered to be part of the TSC. And I will collect all those nominations. I'll send out emails and Slack messages all about that right after this call. But we'll say end of this meeting will be the start of the nomination period.
Perfect. Thanks, Kendall. So then the last thing that I have on this is I'd like to put forward an initial list of people, and I'll put this in the Slack as well to promulgate further to the community. But specifically, Shruti, who's here in the meeting with us, for her 3GPP expertise. Christine, who might not currently be in the meeting, but for her cloud expertise. Nick, for his data plane expertise. Shaboom for his infrastructure expertise. Govindaran from ARM, and then Yogesh from Wave Labs. And then also Joey from Freedom Fi. And I'll put this list in the Slack as well, like I mentioned. But I think based on the conversations TSC has had so far, we think that this would be a good initial set of nominations to provide coverage to the areas that the TSC currently has coverage. So yeah, with that, I can pause, and if Aswin or Shruti or anybody has comments, we can discuss. Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, Hunter. This is Daljit. So I seen Wave Labs is trying to take up some ownership, right? And we've been asked to review some PRs and so on, and that will be probably ongoing support to the community. So is it possible to add some more nomination from Wavelab side in that sense?
Yeah, definitely. So I think what we'll do is after the meeting, Kendall will send out information on the Slack on the explicit process for nominating someone, and we can go from there. And if there are questions, feel free to throw them in the TSC channel as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anta, the reason that Daljit asked this question is because we kind of recruited some very senior folks, right? For example, DevOps toppers like 12, 13 years. Even though he may not have a lot of time put in the community, but we recently recruited some very experienced people having a different perspective from outside will really help the TSC. That's my view.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
A lot of people being in community for a long time and people who are coming in new. It should be the mix that will really help us to have a strong community, at least the technical steering group is my feeling.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks, John.
Sure.
Okay, cool. Then Kendall, I'll kick it back to you.
Oh, yep. Just everyone be on the lookout for more information on that after this meeting. Now we'll move to grants proposal reviews. It'll be Alex. You going through these?
Yes, thank you, Kendall. Just before jumping out into the presentations of both grant proposals, just wanted to make a remark that Joy will be helping from Freedom 5 to do the presentations. And I also want to do the remarks that for the GTP aggregation gateway, the code sponsors will be Oriel and me. For the settlement service, which is split into two projects, the first one being inbound roaming extensions, and the second one, the settlement service edition. Basically, Oriel, Praveen, and me will be acting as the code owners for this. We have begun the review, and we have done the reviews of the proposals and the reviews. And as I said, Joey will be here helping us to do the presentation of the description of the features, the milestones that we are planning, and Freedom 5 is planning to implement. So Joey, if you think you're ready, please take it away.
Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes.
And is my audio working? Okay, cool. Okay, so the first proposal that we'll go through is the GTP aggregator. The GitHub link to the proposal is shared, and I can share this presentation in the meeting notes. So the introduction for the GTP aggregator, if you go to deploy inbound roaming as a Magma operator, you will see that Magma's distributed architecture introduces exciting new challenges when you try to implement inbound roaming. Normally, operators have a small set of SGWs to establish the SA connection to a roaming partner's EGW. Because of the distributed architecture of Magma, a Magma deploying operator can have hundreds or thousands of SGWs, which complicates the connection for inbound roaming. It complicates it in a couple of ways. One is just the sheer number of connections that you have to create. But also, so if you're connecting through an IPX operator, IPX requires that you have a globally routable public IP address that is not advertised outside of the IPX world. And if you're trying to acquire thousands of public IPv4 addresses at this point in time, it can be very challenging. So the proposal is to create a gateway entity that does the aggregation of the SA traffic on the Magma side, so that the roaming interconnect can have a smaller number of connections to roaming partners or to the IPX. The proposed architecture is to create a separate gateway entity similar to FEG, like give it the ability to be deployed separate from the orchestrator and separate from FEG, so that it can be deployed in a traffic aggregation friendly place. So because of how the AWS charges for traffic in and traffic out, because of the fact that you can't connect easily straight from AWS to an IPX network, it makes sense to have it as a separable gateway entity that you can deploy somewhere outside of AWS. Before I jump into milestones, any questions so far? Questions or comments? Okay. Milestones for the project. I realize this is potentially a little small. Let's see if that helps. The first milestone is to implement a proof of concept deployment. We are doing it for a couple of reasons. One is to start getting our connection in between our roaming partner gigs Sky and us working, but it also helps with having a place to test the implementation, because Magma doesn't yet support outbound roaming, so it isn't an option to just like set up a second instance of Magma and create a closed loop test environment. So we have to leverage our partners as the inbound roaming operator for this development. So the proof of concept will be completed in February, March of this year. The second milestone is completing the integration with orchestrator and creating a first-class gateway in the Magma sense, where it checks in with orchestrator, it sends health metrics, and that work is slated for completion from April to June. The third milestone is adding HA functionalities so that the GTP gateway can be set up in an active status to both help spread traffic load, but also give us the ability to have geo-redundancy. Milestone 4 is the completion of integration with the NMS, so that similar to FEG, you have a configuration interface in the NMS, and also so give you the ability to see health status and metrics. And then the last milestone is the completion of upstreaming all of the above. So our goal is to have small pieces of the project going into the upstream throughout, so we don't get to the end and like drop a huge chunk of code, because we've seen that previously, and don't want to repeat it. And so the last milestone is just completion of the upstreaming process plus documentation. So any questions about the GTP aggregator gateway project proposal?
Yes, thanks for the presentation, Joey. I left a comment on the GitHub issue on the grant is, while the proposal talks about the technical details, I was interested in learning what's the plan for testing. If you could give more clarity on what's the plan, what would be the test suite that you would be creating as part of the effort, in terms of end-to-end testing, unit testing, integration testing, and is there a plan to upstream that also? And good point, good call out on it would be good to upstream, not in the chunk at the end, but during the whole process. So if there's a testing plan associated with each of these milestones, that would give us more clarity.
Yes, so the testing for this project from an end-to-end perspective requires a external EGW and realistically an external HSS. I guess that's not required. You could. Well, no, it is. I don't know that you can turn on ESA without And so we definitely plan to create unit tests for all the code as we go and contribute unit tests to the upstream project. The end-to-end test is like similar to testing and AGW end-to-end. You have to set up equipment to run it. And the equipment to complete an end-to-end test is non-trivial, specifically the external EGW. So we will be contributing test plan, test results for the end-to-end test, but we don't plan to contribute a software suite capable of completing an end-to-end. Yes.
See, so what would you be using for development and debugging while, like, in the development process? Is there a lab that you would be testing it?
Yes, the milestone 1 is going to be built using our lab connection to Gigs guy. He has a roaming partner, relying on our partner as an external HSS and PGW. And as it's shown, we have a direct connection to Gigs guy through the Equinix Dallas data center.
Right. And I guess the ask here is, like, once the code is upstream, is there a good way to monitor it for regression? Like, we don't.
Well, we will be operating our production network through it. And so any release that goes into our production will go through our lab first. Plus, we do plan to contribute unit tests and CI tests where we're able, that will hopefully catch the majority of regressions. Okay, any other questions?
I see. Thanks for the clarity.
Joey, sorry, go ahead, Shruti, if you have questions, please.
If you could just append that on the GitHub issue, that would be great for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Joey, I have a couple of quick questions. I understood that you are working with the roaming partners because your network is geographically, globally, deployed, right? So if you wanted to have your network subscribers from one network to another network globally, then you would need a IPX provider that you need to sign an SLA with. That's my understanding. Just correct me if my understanding is incorrect. If not, I will ask the question, follow-on question, please.
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. If you want to have more than one or two roaming relationships, it's just long-term, more scalable to connect to an IPX.
Understood. I mean, I understand the reason of IPX and GRX, and I'm trying to understand the context of why this particular feature has been, requested to implement. So from that context, my understanding is your deployment, your customer deployment is pretty much geographically distributed, and you end up signing SLAs with IPX providers. And if you are going to sign up SLAs with IPX providers, then obviously this domain proxy or GTP proxy is required to kind of have a connection with them from the user plane point of view. Is that right, Joey?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. The follow-on question is the IPX and GRX, for the IPX and GRX providers, how they are supposed to be implementing, what standards that they need to be following to implement is clearly defined in GSMA IARC.67 spec, right? So I just wondering, is there, are you following that spec when you came up with this implementation, or is it just one-off implementation with this example pilot provider who is Equinox Dallas? So what's the thought process there? Is it standard way of doing it or one-off implementation? That's what I was kind of trying to understand.
We are striving to implement this standard way of doing it. We have our own freedom by deployment that is geographically distributed. We also have a customer deployment who is also using Magma through satellite backhaul that is also has the AGWs geographically distributed and has to solve a similar problem of as the deployment scales, so does the number of SGWs, and that is not a traditional bound roaming architecture.
Okay, got it. I'll just for the information purpose, maybe it would be helpful for you. I'll just put it in the chat. There's a working group in GSMA who defines the standards which is supposed to be compliant by every IPX and GRX providers around the globe. Okay, so if you kind of align your implementation to this, then maybe you would have already. If you could look at some of the standards and align your implementation to this, then it could be useful for the wider community in the longer run, not one-off implementation. That's my kind input. I'll have you to look through a little bit details in this.
Sure, we have a look.
Thank you. That's all I had, Joey. Just an input, but otherwise a good feature. Thank you.
Okay, so the next proposal, exit full screen. That was weird.
Hey, Joey, before we go to the next proposal, can I just mention one thing real quick?
Yep.
Perfect, thanks. So we've been working on defining like exactly how the grant process should work, and we've got it to like, beta, I would say. And I just want to quickly publicize the like next iteration, hopefully, the beta version of what we want the proposals to look like. And this is something that we'll send out and publicize through Slack and stuff like that, and that will be like officially part of the template. But just to Shruti's point, basically, I thought it would be useful to show now. So let me just. Oh, can I share my screen for?
Yeah.
Thanks. Let's see if I can. Okay, and so I will send out this link. But can everyone see the TSC grant review?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, so I'll send out this link. But basically, we're going to do one doc per proposal. That way we can keep tabs on, keep everything separate and well organized. And so I think basically the thing that I'm bringing up now is some of the items that Shruti brought up. We'll have like specific line items in the grant proposals so that we can align on them earlier in the pipeline to make sure that like unit test coverage and regression plans and things like that are like considered early in the process. So yeah, this is just a short publicity for this, and I'll send out the link here in a sec, and we'll get it updated in the grants repo as well. But yeah, okay, cool. Thanks. I'll kick it back to you, Joey.
Okay, let me reshare. Okay, and you guys see settlement service proposal?
Yes.
See heads
We can see it.
nodding, yes, okay. So the settlement service proposal, and I should also share in case it isn't obvious, the slides I'm showing are summaries. Going to the GitHub proposal itself shows more fleshed out discussion of each of these. So the settlement service proposal is targeted at creating an accounting and settlement infrastructure for a helium cellular network. Unlike traditional cellular deployments where CDRs and the end of month TAP wrap records are sufficient for interoperator settlement and billing reconciliation. In a helium cellular deployment, all of the radios are owned by individuals that need to be compensated for any traffic that traverses their cells. In addition, roaming partners, so national operators who want their subscribers to roam into the helium network will essentially have prepaid accounts that have to be debited to pay the particular radio owner. So we have a new accounting and settlement structure that we have to accommodate. While trying to accommodate, we also want to make sure it's a trust limited system so that the ability for people to game the accounting system is limited. Then, similar to some of the last questions for the last project, we wanted to create a solution that stays as close to traditional the RGPP standard interfaces, so that the ecosystem of who could participate from the vendor community was kept as broad as possible. So with that in mind, the architecture shown on the screen is being proposed. And I'm not going to go through it in super detail, but essentially what you have is a traditional OCS who receives a GUI-like interface coming from the Magma SGW. And it's the job of that OCS to track the per operator prepaid account. So in the end, you have the home operators, OCS, plus this visited networks, OCS, where the home operator is tracking at the per subscriber level, and the visited network is doing online real-time charging at a PLMN level. So just looking at the EMZ prefix. Once a counting data has been tracked, that balance management is stored in blockchain state channels. And state channels have a life cycle of a couple hours, and so state channels get managed and then committed to the main chain. How we propose to implement this in Magma is create an entity called session forwarder that sits in between session D and a helium miner to forward session statistics to the miner so it can sign it with its public key and essentially vouch for that consumption data. The miner then forwards the traffic to the helium handler. The helium handler is the interface in between the Magma system and a traditional OCS, so that the traditional OCS just sees or sorry, the handler is up the operator balances in the OCS based on session data, which should also match the consumption coming from the GY messages through the traditional route. So session D to FEG relay, session proxy going into the OCS. And it's with these two routes for the consumption data that let us have trust that the operator balance is being appropriately managed. So coming out of the FEG relay is the session telemetry service. So to create TAP records for the operator reconciliation, we are proposing the creation of a session telemetry service that is the source of data for TAP record creation. Any questions before I go on to the milestones?
Joey, this is Ariel. This proposal, I guess that, I mean, there is some kind of changes, but I guess that this proposal it should be built on top of the other proposal that we were discussing a couple of 3 weeks that has passed.
Yes. Yeah, and so we have a separate proposal called Magma extensions for inbound roaming.
Okay.
That is a precursor. It should actually come before settlements service. And the goal of this proposal is to get session D, pipeline D, in the flow for the inbound roaming use case, so that the record generation for both local subscribers and inbound roaming subscribers is unified.
Okay, sounds good then.
With the advice of the Meta team, the proposal showing on the screen was separated out from the settlement domain. So it is a smaller chunk of like fully contained work to unify the flow for local subscribers and inbound roamers. And just to review, it's a smaller project. It has 3 milestones. The first milestone is to demonstrate the changes in the attach call flow, so that we're able to see all the statistics in the session service. And then the second milestone is to update the up-to-date and terminate call flows, so that again, all of this statistics for inbound roaming sessions are accessible through session D, similar to how it is for local subscribers. So that was just a short slide. The milestones for the settlements service project is first to demonstrate producing the CDRs through an API call for stationary UEs. So this is a single session going through a single AGW. The next milestone is to demonstrate the session purchaser governed access. So when an inbound roaming subscriber tries to attach, the session purchaser is what is in charge of talking to the local OCS to confirm that the operator associated with that subscriber has credits to consume. And so milestone 2 is showing that the OCS CS has control of whether or not a session is approved in the visited network. Milestone 3 is to demonstrate the minor sign CDRs and show that the data is written to the state channels. Milestone 5 is to demonstrate successful generation of TAP records in a multi-session test. Milestone 5 is a demonstration of RAP records. So if we get a RAP in response to one of our TAP records, show that RAP is received, handled, and reconciled. And then milestone 6 is show the launch of the first roaming partner operator to have access to the Helium network with full settlement service in place. And the last milestone is similar to the previous project, ensuring that the whole project, including code and all the tests, all the documentation, are upstreamed. And that's the end of the proposal. I'll stop for questions.
Hey, Joey, just what we have been seeing, it could be good. I know that maybe we have to put it in one proposal. I'm not sure how it's gonna go, but it could be good to separate this, even if it's on our minds, into 4. I think it's 4 gonna be 4 different kind of big efforts. One is inbound roaming, so addition of session day. The other one is outbound roaming, which I'm not sure if it's here mentioned.
That's a separate proposal.
Okay, so
yeah,
let's say it like this is another one. The other one is the CDRs. I think that this should be separate by itself. At least I'm not sure if it should be a separate proposal or not, but in our minds it should be different. And then all the mining stuff, services, which on that case, since we don't have any experience, so what I'm trying to do here is kind of like separate into things that we can handle and we can understand. And then the mining part, which is something that Magma team doesn't have much knowledge, then we can tackle differently. So to me, I would see this into these 4 groups, 3 if you want to leave outbound roaming outside. But in all the cases, what I see here, it's well, piggybacking with what Shruti mentioned, it's the testing. It could be awesome if you guys could have, before even starting, set up an inbound roaming setup, because even for the aggregator, so all of them have the same common denominator, which is inbound roaming setup. So all of them, without a setup, you will find very difficult to test your code, right? So my advice, like kind of like for all of the proposals that you have, it's make sure that you get a setup with the current inbound roaming right now working, and then you can start modifying this on top of that, right? So that could be my kind of advice. Divided it into kind of groups, so we are able to help you guys. And also have like a setup, because we don't have this setup, so we won't be able to even check it out.
Yes, so we have split it up, and the CDRs are a separate proposal. We also want CDRs, so while included in the settlement domain proposal is mention, of CDRs. We have a separate proposal to implement the same CDR functionality as a standalone Magma feature, totally separate from the full blockchain settlement, because we have multiple customer deployments who have roaming relationships who need CDRs for settlement. So it is really three related but separable projects, similar to what you said. So CDRs, the session separation and enhancements, and then gluing it all together with the mining side.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Just let me rephrase that. So the idea is you guys test it, right? We won't be able to test at all. I mean, that's the idea of that. That's why it's important that you guys have a setup even before. So even before starting the deployment, my advice to you guys is to have like this setup working, running, and then from there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Start. And if you can add it to the CI, I'm not sure if it can be added to a CI, a public CI on Magma. That will help you a lot. I mean, per my experience, that will help you a lot to catch any regression, especially because you are gonna do kind of changes on things that are already working, right?
So, in a lot of places, we can add tests for the full end-to-end test. It is going to require, either a roaming partner or a external EGW, because all of, well, that's not completely true. The settlement service goal is intended to work for both local breakout and S8 home routed. And so in the case of TSC and the S8 home routed, the test setup is going to, you have to have a non-Magma EGW.
So another
Oriel, just a question, maybe just a clarification, right? See, some of the features that we can implement can be used by the wider community, right? And some of the features that we implement cannot be used by the wider community.
Yeah.
what I wanted to really understand is, I mean, the features that we would be doing approved by the grants, to my understanding, should be used by can be used by the wider community. And if it is not, then it becomes a proprietary feature that can be implemented by the companies, right, for their own use cases. So I was just trying to maybe I'm not sure, maybe I don't understand this Helium network, like you rightly mentioned. The settlement service proposal, I was just thinking when Joey was presenting, how it can be used by the wider audience, right? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we are working to help create the certification process for becoming a Helium network operator, and part of the process is deploying a Magma based core. And so the goal of contributing this project to the upstream is to enable it not to be a freedom fly only one-off project. It is to create the community resource for other operators to deploy Magma as a Helium operator. And we have multiple partners in the Helium community that we haven't announced publicly that are joining the Magma community, or they will be shortly, that will benefit from the upstreaming of this project.
Got it. So those operators who wants to be part of the Helium network market, addressable market share, they can benefit from this, right? So those who are not going to be part of the Helium network, which is not the only network available, right? This particular feature may not be usable by them. That's how I see it. Is that understanding correct, Joey?
The mining settlements side, I think that's true. The TAP wrap support, the CDRs are broadly applicable to any roaming enabled deployment.
Got it. I got my answer. Just I was curious to kind of understand how this whole thing worked. So just brought it up. Thanks a lot, Joey, for clarification.
Yeah, and the idea of dividing this into small proposals, it's exactly that. And I think that in the future that should be done like that, because if we divide, so the idea it's the PRs or the proposal should help everybody if they can, right? If we add all of them in one single proposal, probably the scope is shrink, right? If we divide it into smaller proposals, you can think better on a wider scope. For that, for example, addition of session D on the call flow, right? If you add it on a big proposal, the scope of this addition is kind of diluted, and it's kind of like the proposal or the architecture of this feature is going to be targeted with the whole proposal. But if you do a small proposal for that, the target is going to be this. It's going to be, we are going to think, or the person that proposed this is going to think, how can I fit this, not just for my feature, but for the usage of the entire community. That's why, in my opinion, it's really important to, in the example of adding the session D, it's separated totally from anything. Just think, hey, how can I add session D without breaking anything and adding something to the system, right? Without thinking on the mining and anything else. The rest should be built on top of that. You can think how, I mean, you can kind of point on that direction, but also thinking that this should work without the extra layers that you are gonna add. That's why I think that it's really important to separate it.
Yeah, which if you look, we have 3 separate proposals. One for the inbound roaming session enhancements, a separate one for traditional 3GPP compliance CDRs, and then the settlement service proposal builds off of those 2.
Hey guys, I just want to jump in here. We are way over time, so we'll need to move the next agenda items to the next meeting. Do we want to keep these meetings bi-weekly, or are we wanting to move them weekly, as we seem to be getting quite a few agenda topics?
Yeah, Kendall, I would recommend weekly would be good, because at least from the WaveLabs point of view, we have around 18, 19 proposals that we would like to
Sure.
and articulate why we would like to do it, right? So yeah, please. And also the timing, if it could be, IST friendly, I would appreciate it. This is like,
yes, we'll meet
at 2:30 in the morning now, 3 a.m. in the morning. My team is
We'll unfortunately need to meet at the same time next week. And then once we get the new TSC voting members intact, then we can make sure it works for everyone who's on the TSC, and then we can update it for the following week.
Sure. Thank you, Ken.
Also, a suggestion here, can we review the proposals offline on the proposals pages, and we can have offline commentary, and then unresolved comments we can discuss in this meeting. Otherwise, it will take a lot of time to have detailed discussions like this.
Well, and I think that's the goal of having them posted in GitHub. You guys proposals, right?
Yeah, let me jump in here. So obviously, we're still trying to figure this out, and so we're open to suggestions. Yes, we should absolutely provide feedback in writing in GitHub, and we'll do that on our side. But just as a reminder, we're not reviewing every single proposal unless it's been vetted, right? So it needs to have a sponsor. It needs to be reviewed by the grant committee to see if there's a business use case. Only after that does it come to the TSC, because otherwise we just won't get through all the items that are listed.
Good point, Ashwin.
Got it, Ashwin.
So Ashwin, my question here is how we get the sponsors? Like, what's the process there?
Right. So it's based on the areas that you're trying to address, right? You need code owner sponsors for those areas. Right now, there's obviously nominations also happening for code owners. So it's an opportunity if you want to take ownership of a particular area of code, nominate folks, and then we can have that the voting happen. But the people that are responsible for that part of the code base need to sign off on it, right? Now, from a community perspective, they're the gatekeepers of that code. And so they need to see that, hey, we're willing to support this, and then we can come together on that.
So Ashwin, just to clarify. So what I understood from you is that there is a business committee which is going to look at all the features in the business plan, and then it is going to be pushed on to the TSC committee. And then within the TSC committee, you have code owners and you look for all the sponsors within the TSC committee, right?
Sorry, to be clear, the people that are sponsoring the proposal need to do a preliminary screen of it, right? So if the code owner says, yeah, that roughly sounds like a good idea, then it goes to the grants ad committee to review. Right? We don't want them to have complete whatever proposals, but at the same time, we don't want to take the depth to do every technical review at that stage. So we'll publish these more broadly as well. I appreciate that this is not as clear, and so we'll make an effort to clear that up.
Sure, we can work together to improve. Thanks, Ashwin. We'll take this.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.